Hey there YouTube, welcome to Big Mike Beard Wisdom. So today we're going to be replacing this hose bib, and basically it's an outdoor, like freeze-proof anti-siphon one. The problem with this one though is that it leaks right in here, and I could probably buy a rebuild kit, but I kind of want to just replace the whole thing. In order to remove that, the first step that I have is that down here in the basement I would luckily have a shut-off valve that's dedicated just to that hose bib. Now the weird thing is that it's almost like they probably ran the entire hose bib in. So the hose bib actually screws into pipe way down there that you can't really see, and then comes all the way up here, and then looks like it was just soldered in up here in this elbow, dropped down, and then brought here to the shut-off valve. So the first step will be shutting the valve off, which in this format, the down is off. And then we'll go outside and open the hose up, the hose bib up. That way any excess water that's in there can drain out. So now that the water's shut off inside, we can go ahead and open this up just to make sure that we don't have any pressure in it. Doesn't look like any water's coming out. So that should be good to go. As you can see, it's a little scary back there. But you got the small hole in the house, and then there's that little section where it looks like it's collared up. And a lot of times that's a threaded section. And you should be careful for how the water's going to wind up leaking when you separate this. Just because if you've got wires, kind of like what we have here, you don't want anything getting wet. So luckily, this just goes to just a dead switch panel. That it was like someone had a project planned, but never actually finished it. So this doesn't actually go anywhere. So for the moment, I'm just going to pull this out of the way. That way I have a little bit more room. Plus it gets a few cobwebs out of the way. And my plan is to basically just cut the pipe here. This is kind of easy to get to. Plus, I've got it over this bucket. That way it should kind of save us from making a bigger mess than needed. And this is about 1/2-inch copper pipe. So I'm just going to use this little adjustable size pipe cutter. And my thoughts for this is to essentially get the new hose bib and attach more or less like a Sharkbite to it, run it back inside the house, and use PEX up to about here. Because I'm hoping if I use the PEX, it may help in case there's like any expansion with the water. So should something happen to freeze, I'm hoping the PEX will help buffer any kind of burst pipe situation. And then to use these pipe cutters is pretty simple. Just go ahead and tighten it down so there's a little bit of pressure. And then turn it. And as you turn it, it'll drive this cutting disc into the pipe. So you'll have to continually keep tightening it as you go. But that kind of happens, seems like every time I do this, I drop it right in the bucket. But you can see, it cut it pretty simple. Not a lot of pain in the butt stuff. So now that it's cut, the next step is to basically go ahead and take these two screws out. One screw here, and then one screw there. And then we'll pull everything out the front here. And these hose bibs come in different lengths. So this one looks to be like it was about 1 foot long. Because I cut the end like that, we're going to need about, say, 38 to 40 inches of length from like the flange here. in order to do this right. That way I've got a little bit extra, and I can always trim to fit on the inside. And then I'm just inspecting the hole a little bit. It looks like it's kind of oblong cut. So they must have thought, you know, this is close enough. They went, oh, nope, let's run it again. But now's a good time to kind of double check this seal to see if there's any places you want to caulk in order to seal it back up, just to help keep any like bugs or other intruders out of the house. With that pipe out, we can take a quick look at how these work. And they're pretty cool, because essentially the knob turns a rod that goes all the way through the pipe, and it seals in the back. So if we were to look at this one real quick, you can kind of see that screw right there. Alright, so you can see that screw right there. That's basically the stopper. And whenever you open this handle up, it allows that screw, or the stopper, to be able to be moved. And that allows the water to flow through. Then, as you screw this tight, so now it's off, that doesn't move. So now it's sealed off and the valve is turned off. And having that go and seal way back here helps in the wintertime, because instead of being exposed to all the cold and the elements out here, you're shutting it off way back here. So hopefully by the time you shut this off and it gets cold enough to start freezing, the water's evacuated out of here and you don't have to worry about water freezing and bursting somewhere in this range. And there's a bunch of different lengths that you can buy. This one I bought because it was the longest one for relatively cheap, as this was about half the price of that one. And then the neat thing with this one is that this cap unscrews. So if at some point in time I have to do any kind of maintenance to the anti-siphon part, I can. So now that we saw how that kind of works, it's pretty neat. It looks like this one's about the same length as that one. So I think we should be pretty good. And other stuff that I picked up was basically a Sharkbite. That way I could screw this on. And then I'll be using this gray plumber's tape. And this is pretty cool, because I've used like Teflon tape in the past, but this gray plumber's Teflon tape is super thick and really helps with getting a good seal. And you can be able to use a lot less of the tape than you would with like the white one. Then I'll use a little bit of PEX to join from here at the Sharkbite and into the house. And then I'll use another Sharkbite in order to join basically the PEX to where this was cut off at. That way I've got a little bit extra frost protection just in case anything happens. And the nice thing is that the house has that shutoff valve right there. So worst comes to worst, if something does leak, I can always shut it off. Now, whenever you use any kind of like tape that goes on threads, what you want to do is you want to make sure you've got it wrapped around in the direction that you're going to be running the fastener on. And the reason why you do it in that same direction is that it allows the fastener to more or less tighten without loosening the tape and causing any weird binding. So as I screw this on, it's going in the same direction the tape was laid, and it's not picking up and pulling the tape and causing any bunching of the tape or any difficulty running this on. And then real quick, I'll just snug these in place with a wrench. Alright, and then Sharkbites are pretty cool. If you've never used them, they're pretty simple. They've got this little outer piece here. This piece here can push down on a set of fingers. Those fingers are what grips onto the pipe on the inside. And then they use an O-ring along the outside to seal to the pipe. So you want to make sure that the pipe is clean on the outside when you put it on, and hopefully it doesn't have any scratches. in this general direction. So in the direction that everything's merging together. Because a scratch in that direction could allow water to bypass the O-ring and possibly leak out. And then all you wind up doing is basically just taking your new pipe, lining it up, and then squeezing it in until it stops. And what I did every other time I've done this is normally I mark the pipe to make sure it's in far enough to be fully connected. This time I kind of forgot to do that. But it feels like it's good and in, and it looked like it dropped in far enough that we should be good. Then I went ahead, I slipped the pipe in so far. We'll see if it clears. Hopefully I get lucky and we're good to go. Okay, I think we're good. So now this little plastic piece here helps set an angle. The angle helps to maintain that you've got this kind of like pointed down. Well, pointed down. So that way this end here is pointed down a little bit. That way this drains when it's shut off and helps prevent the water from staying inside and freezing. And then this looks like it's pretty simple. Looks like I can go either on this way or that way. There's a little warning over here about removing the hose. So I'll put it on probably this way. That way you can still see it. And the big thing though is that the angle is meant to have this open section here down. So you can see it's a little bit thicker at the top than it is at the bottom. And then this is just a little bit of a different shape than the old one. So some of this stuff is going to be visible. So go ahead and just take a quick moment and clean it. That way you don't look at it later like, oh, well, I should have cleaned it. It's covered mostly. Just need to clean a little bit more under there. So if we take a good look at the old piece, you can kind of see all this stuff back here. And this is coated pretty good in this stuff, and this is still kind of like tacky. So I'm assuming this is some type of like a plumber's putty or like a pipe dope type of thing. So it's not meant to be like a full-on pipe sealant. It's meant to be like a whole sealant where it doesn't fully cure really. That way it's always able to maintain a good seal and expands and moves as needed. And of course I couldn't find anything. But I'm hoping that's the same as this stuff. So this has for setting bowls, fixtures, faucets, sink frames, and strainers will not crack, separate, crumble, harden, or shrink. So I'm hoping this is a similar kind of makeup. So hopefully this works pretty good. It does have some warnings, so don't use it on plastic and don't use it on marble, granite, limestone, or other dimensional stone. And then right next to it, there was another one of these that was for if you were putting it on stone. So luckily for us, it's just going to the side of the house. And I'm hoping we're going to be okay. The only thing that I worry about is that little angle piece is plastic. So I don't know if it won't seal to it or what's going to happen, but we'll find out. Because really, if this is the same kind of stuff, this is plastic. So, I've got this in place. And the plan now is that I've got the screws in place. That way it's kind of holding it about where it should be. I've got good access back here. So I should be able to take this stuff, hook a few good finger amounts of it, and kind of just jam it in there. And the idea would be to kind of set it, that way it seals this backside really good, and then seals to this white piece. And I think we should be good from there. And then it'll just be kind of cleaning up around it to make sure that I've got, you know, not a whole lot of that stuff sneaking around it. It's like growing up Play-Doh. So making a little bit of a snake, and then I'll try and wrap it around. I've just been kneading the snake down and around the pipe and trying to tuck it more or less into the house. And the closer it gets in there, the happier I'll be. So, because I figure I'll leave a little bit out, that way it's got plenty to kind of stick to this but I wanted to be as far jammed in there as possible just to help keep any like ants out or any little bugs. I figure the more that's on the pipe and in the hole, the better off we'll be. All right, so that's in there pretty good. It's got just a little bit left over on around it. That way it should help seal to it. And then we'll just tighten these screws up. All right, and it looks like it's fairly straight, and she's fairly sturdy. Looks like I squeezed out a good bit of it underneath, so I'll go ahead and I'll swipe that up real quick with my finger, try and clean it up. But otherwise, looks pretty good. Back inside, I've got this handy PEX. It's a deburring tool, plus it kind of lets you gauge out how far it needs to be. So right now, you can kind of see that on all these different sizes, there's a little bit of a black line on most of these. And the reason for that is because once you get it on where it's going, just slide it on and put a quick mark. And then whenever you put the Sharkbite on, it should go almost all the way to that mark, if not touching. I slipped the Sharkbite on. You can see it's right all the way to that mark. So it's all the way past the O-ring seal and should be good and leak proof once everything's connected. Now we just have to trim the blue PEX pipe and cut it to fit. That way it's able to go in here and hit about to that shoulder. Now anytime you're doing a fuzzy logic kind of I think this will work situation where you can't measure it, you've got to just kind of eyeball it, I'd recommend cutting it a little bit long just to be sure. So this right here seems like it's going to be pretty close to that shoulder, so I'm going to leave it where it's at. I'm going to put this on it real quick just to make sure that it somewhat lines up. And then this is the 1/2 inch tube. So you can kind of see that it should be pretty close. And the nice thing with this is that it also has a little bit of a deburring. So we'll just spin it around real quick. That way we don't have any burrs on this. So nice and smooth, no risk of cutting the O-ring as we slip that in. And then we'll wipe it down and make sure it's dry and make the connection. I'll put a little black line on there just to be safe. And then as you can see, you can just barely make out that little black line. So we should be good to go. Now to verify this, what I would recommend is wipe down all your fittings really good. Everywhere you made a joint, make sure they're good and dry. Though that's going to suck to try and get to. And then go ahead and turn the water on. Let it sit for a little bit as you look it over. And then walk away for it a little bit, maybe like 5-10 minutes, then come back. And what you're looking for is any kind of wetness. So if as soon as you flip it on, you see a leak, you know, go ahead and shut the water back off. But if you don't see a leak right away, letting it sit that little bit allows you to see if you've got a really slow, just a little tiny trickle of a leak. So one where it's just slightly bypassing. And especially in like threaded fittings, that's kind of common. In which case you may need to retighten it. And the handy thing with the Sharkbite being right there is that I should be able to use the Sharkbite release tool to just loosen that, slip it off the pipe, and then I can take the whole thing back out pretty easily to make sure it's good and tight if I need to tighten it up. That way I'm not trying to reach way up and into that cavity and try and tighten it, only to, you know, maybe either over tighten it or push too hard somewhere and break something. So the valve is off outside. So we'll go ahead and we'll turn this valve to on. That's fully on. And then it looks like this connection here is doing okay. The connection up here looks like it's doing okay as well. I'm not seeing any drips or sprays. This looks like it's doing okay. Now granted, it should have a big slug of air in it. So real quick, we'll just turn this on. So turned on, shut off pretty good. And then this will continue to drip as that entire amount of that tube kind of clears out and drips down. Just as long as I have that off. So we'll go back inside real quick, double check, make sure those are still doing good. This is all doing pretty good. There's no drips. Everything's holding. This one's doing well as well. This one's also doing good. So no drips, no sprays, nothing weird. And I've had a lot of good luck with shark bites. A few of them in the house have been holding for years. So I'm pretty confident with how these are set up. Now I just want to go outside and check the actual anti-siphon hose bib to make sure everything's good to go with that. So this is like it's doing well. It's not leaking. It's pretty much dried where it kind of hit on the house. And with that having dried off, I think we're pretty much good to go with that. This isn't leaking internally. I bought this real quick just to help insulate the hose bib. And it's one of those things where there's times where I'm pulling the hose reel around and it'll yank on here. And I just want to have a little bit something extra to help maybe protect this. So I'm hoping having this coiled spring will help. I don't know if it will or not. Let's go ahead and turn it on. And it looks like we're doing good. So right away, we would have a little bit of water coming out on this one. So it looks like we're doing good here, nice and dry. Nothing weird is coming out up here. This is about the third week, and we're still nice and waterproof, both inside and outside. So I'd call this a pretty good success. It was pretty simple to do, and especially with the shark bites, it was really easy. So, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll check you next time. That is kind of a pretty color of blue. Hey there, YouTube. Welcome to Big Mike Beard Wisdom. So today, we're going to be So, now that the water's shut off outside, or... Now, fully closed, you can't move that. Once you screw the back... So, all right. So, how's it going? Doing pretty good. So your outdoor hose fittings seal with just a rubber with just a rubber O-ring. So your outdoor hose fittings normally seal with an So your rubber hose fittings, oh man. So your outdoor hose fittings normally seal with a rubber O-ring. So you don't have to super tighten them. Normally you can just get them on and then just... Whoop, is this cross-threading? Oh, it's going to be one of those days.